Moderating today's next two panels is award-winning writer Stephanie Beasley. Stephanie spent over 20 years at the helm of Silicon Valley Gentry's magazines. In 2015, the Silicon Valley Business Journal named her as one of the most influential women in the Valley. She founded the Gentry Women in Tech Conference in 2018, and earlier this year, she co-founded a boutique PR firm focused on amplifying the voices of female founders, VCs, and C-suite executives. She also co-founded the Silicon Valley Women's Leadership Initiative with a roster of events that will launch in 2021. On a very personal note, Stephanie and her team created the deck we had at the start of the program, and you'll see it at the end, that's thanking all of our sponsors and speakers today. She's been behind the scenes nonstop supporting our event, and I want to thank her and acknowledge all the hours she's volunteered. Over to you, Stephanie, to introduce Melanie and then our panel of VCs on a topic that is top of mind for all of us, funding underrepresented founders. Over to you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Susan. It is just an incredible pleasure to be here today. And especially since it's Women's Entrepreneurship Day, and I want to give a quick shout out to Maria. That was a beautiful speech just now and meant so much to everyone. So thank you for sharing your personal experience. I know it's informed your business as well, and very inspiring to hear. So thank you, Maria. Okay, next up, it is my great pleasure to introduce one of the real trailblazers in health tech today. Melanie Goldey is the COO and CFO of Tomorrow Health Sciences. After graduating from Wellesley with a BA in economics, Melanie embarked on her investment banking career. She first started at JP Morgan Securities in San Francisco and New York, honing her skills in corporate finance and strategic advisory transactions, especially with companies in tech and media. These are skills that have definitely served her well over the past 15 years. While at JP Morgan, Melanie's talents were spotted quickly. She was asked to join the direct staff of the head of Americas for investment banking, which is focused on a multi-year strategy planning session and other special projects. In 2008, Melanie joined Everyday Health, which was in an early startup stage, and guided it through 8 acquisitions and a successful IPO and sale to JT Global Ziff Davis for $500 million. In 2015, Melanie was recognized as a rising star by the Healthcare Business Women's Association. She took a little bit of a pivot and went to Refinery 29 next and served as their CFO during their incredible merger with Vice Media, which created the largest independent digital media company in the world, valued at $4 billion. And then just last year, right before 2020, Melanie returned to healthcare technology, which I know is one of her passions and we'll discuss shortly. She is now the COO and CFO, as I mentioned, of Tomorrow Life Sciences. Tomorrow provides an integrated platform for automated, software-guided, help me if I'm saying this right, Melanie, cryospecimen management for precious cells that will be used in IVF. Welcome, Melanie. We're so thrilled you're here. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for those very kind words. And I just wanted to thank you, Stephanie, and also the entire HitLab team for putting today's event together, and also Goodwin Proctor, our friends over there who are sponsoring this session. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And right now, I know the audience wants to really hear your story and find out how you decided to go from finance to technology.
Yeah, it's, actually very personal. My father was a tech entrepreneur, and I guess back in the day when that had a slightly different meaning. But from a very young age, he would take apart motherboards at home and put them back together. I have photos of, sitting in my father's den playing with computer chips. I thought they were toys. And of course, I didn't have any way of knowing at the time, but I developed a sort of natural affinity for technology and an understanding of how quickly, not only that technology could change so quickly, but that it could really change people's lives and hopefully change people's lives for the better. So this topic has always really excited me. And as I got older and throughout my career, I've always sought opportunities where I can have an ability to be at the center of something disruptive, leveraging automation, software, data, all of that to vastly improve, manual or analog processes. And I learned over time that I had a numbers, orientation. So I sort of leaned in there, and finding something that marries finance and technology was really special. But I think there's a broader concept that really drew me to technology overall that I think is really relevant to a lot of the folks on the call today. And that is that technology needs more women. I think for far too long, the female perspective has been omitted from the way things have been designed. The average woman struggles to open doors because most doors were designed for the tensile strength of the average man, as an example. When airbags were first released, unfortunately, hundreds of women and children actually were injured or killed because when bags that were deployed, because those airbags were tested by male engineers who were looking at the weight of an average man, as an example. In technology, you see this all the time. Assistant technology like Siri and Alexa have women's names. And even naming a flagship product like the iPad, which, for all of us on the call, half your consumers are women who have a different association with that word. So, those are just some things that I see in our day-to-day lives that there's a disconnect there. And I think the other shocking fact is that women control 85% of global consumer spending. So if we're making decisions, yet our perspective isn't incorporated into the design of our products and technology, there's a massive, disconnect, but also a massive opportunity there for this next wave of female entrepreneurs to step in and create a new wave of disruption.
Fabulous. And such great observations, and so true. Right now, I'd love to find out, you always had this affinity for technology, and that's probably part of the decision, but you had a pretty comfy spot at JP Morgan. What made you say, I'm going to leave this lovely corporate job and go do, a scrappy startup?
Yeah, I loved my time at JP Morgan. It's a great training ground. I got to know a ton of different people, industries. Many of these folks are still great friends and mentors. Leaving was a pretty personal decision. I think, as with any big change, women tend to think through every permutation of how the situation could go. What is it going to mean? Can I really do this? Am I ready? So it was a little scary, but I did a lot of soul searching and ultimately reflected that I was more of a principal than an agent. And I wanted to go to the company side to see if I couldn't help build something. So I knew it was a risk, but I thought, hey, this could be fun. And Everyday Health was actually a client at the time. So I knew the team, I knew the company. I thought what they were doing was very interesting, a mission orientation around helping consumers live healthier lives. But also, again, this thesis of harnessing the internet and technology to bring not only health and wellness information online, but to connect patient communities with healthcare professionals, and the powerful and impactful nature of that. And so it was very exciting to me. I think it was risky, but I took a leap, and I don't know, I guess I didn't look back. And 9 years later, it turned out to be one of the most fulfilling chapters in my career, and also a place where I really grew as a person. So in hindsight, I probably could have saved myself a lot of stress if I didn't look at it so microscopically, but it was a big decision, and I'm really glad that I did it. And I found that I had a passion for growth environments, and for, that, it didn't scare me that, scrappy startup, everybody does a lot of different things. You wear a lot of different hats. And to me, that was just fun.
Fabulous. And really, back at Tomorrow, you're sort of back in that startup mode, albeit it's an incredibly well-funded startup. Tomorrow, for everybody on the line, has raised over $50 million just in the past year. What's it like? I mean, you did your foray into Refinery 29. What is it like to be back in Healthdeck and growing a company during a pandemic?
I love being at Tomorrow. Joining this company was a little bit like kismet for me because it represents so many of my long-held passions, as you said, Stephanie. Technology, consumer-focused healthcare. Really helping take the company itself to the next level so that our solution can quickly reach as many people as possible. And I love being in a growth environment. So it's been super fun. Being at the center of women's health, particularly fertility, which is getting a lot of attention right now, is very fun. Our industry has, in fact, not slowed down. Many of our clients who are fertility clinics have actually saw the need to accelerate the adoption of our technology to help them care for the specimens that are in their storage because of COVID. And ultimately in service of those patients and providing a more safe and secure environment for the eggs and embryos that are being stored on their premises. The CEO of Carrot, which is a provider of fertility benefits, many of you may know, actually said that her appointment bookings were also surpassing kind of pre-COVID levels. And I think she was quoted saying, what COVID has really revealed is that fertility care is not is core and essential. It's not a perk. It's not an elective, process. It's very much needed. And so, speaking purely commercially, I think that is the silver lining of going through what we've gone through this year, is to actually really recognize that, fertility procedures, fertility as a whole, really is very important. And, I think from an operational perspective, it's been interesting. Leaders everywhere are trying to figure out how to navigate uncharted waters. I never thought I would be in a position where I'd have to come up with a COVID safety protocol for the team, but, we're doing that. And I think the most important thing is, just control what we can control, be smart, be safe, and really hold our employees and our partners at the center of any strategy around that. So luckily, we did do some financial planning earlier in the year, which I think was really smart. And we've implemented a very high standard of COVID protocols within the company as well. So we're testing our employees weekly and in some cases bi-weekly. So far so good, knock on wood. But it's been truly interesting. And I know every company, big or small, is just trying to do their best to figure it out.
Isn't that true? It's a brand new world, and amazing how we're all adapting to it. You've alluded to the Tomorrow product quite a bit, and it's got such exciting opportunities for business growth. But on the other side of it, on the patient side, it's really game changing. And I'd love for you to really just explain what Tomorrow is, soup to nuts.
Yeah, sure. So I'll take a step back and just share some fun facts with you all. 1 in 10 people is infertile, which means they need some sort of an assistance from a doctor. 1 in 10 kids in Denmark is an IVF baby, 1 in 20 in Japan, 1 in 8 on the upper east side of New York. With these numbers, I think we are really verging on discussing demography. And like Maria just said in the session before us, this is a public health issue. And the other staggering fact is that it's estimated that 300 million people will be born as a result of IVF in the remainder of this century. So it's absolutely staggering. IVF was actually developed in the barnyard about 50 years ago for cattle breeding and horse breeding. And the way that embryos were stored back then was in aluminum containers that were manually filled with liquid nitrogen to keep them cold. When IVF was then developed for humans, that same storage system was then moved from the barnyard to fertility clinics. And that's how it is today. So human eggs and embryos are stored in aluminum doors that are filled with liquid nitrogen to keep them cold. And it requires manual tweaking, manual adjustments, manual checkups. And so there's a lot of error that could happen, and there's a lot of risk there. And in the meantime, there are a couple of big things going on that factor into the situation. So first is a medical breakthrough called vitrification, which is just a fancy way of saying flash freezing. But vitrification is very important because when you extract eggs and you create embryos, you can freeze them now. And that means 2 big things for people going through IVF. One is that gone are the days of having to transfer multiple embryos into somebody, right? So I don't know, in the 80s or 90s, if you know people who have done IVF, it was always a story of twins and triplets. That doesn't have to happen anymore because you can safely transfer one embryo at a time. The other very important implication, again, in service to patients, is that with vitrification, you can now do pre-genetic testing, which, we're not talking about designer babies here. What we're talking about is being able to screen for chronic conditions that have plagued families for generations. And I think that is incredibly important. The last piece here is a bunch of social tailwinds that are happening that are essentially pushing the number of specimens that require long-term care and storage to increase exponentially. So you have people generally wanting to have children later in life. You have the traditional definition of a family changing. Some of our fertility clinic partners have 25% of their patients coming from LGBTQ community. Younger women thinking about fertility preservation. So there's a lot of egg freezing conversations going on. So all of these things are just creating this rather unsustainable increase in the number of specimens that require this, storage. And the fertility clinics, as much as they would like to be, aren't really equipped to be able to do that with their current manual system. So this is where tomorrow comes in. So we have an integrated platform that has, a freezer tank with robotics and a software solution that wraps around this. So we're essentially helping to bring these IVF labs into the future by leveraging technology. Each patient will have a unique identifier code for their specimens. There's RFID technology that tracks where their specimens are at all times. So we have 100% digital chain of custody, and we have a monitoring system that essentially watches over your specimens to make sure that they are okay at all times. So, I think what's very interesting is, this is the solution that I think will be the operating system for how all of those hundreds of millions of people will be born. And unfortunately, there have been events, wrong embryo, wrong mom. There have been catastrophic events where there's been a power failure or some other thing where clinics have lost thousands of embryos. And that's just catastrophic. And so I think if we can help by providing this environment for these specimens to be cared for until they're ready to be used, that really is our mission. And Maria said something else in the earlier session that I thought was very interesting, is to educate yourself. And so I think from a patient perspective or a consumer perspective, even if you're not planning to go through egg freezing or IVF, I think it's really important for people to understand not only about the procedure itself, but what's going to happen to my, eggs and embryos, and where will they be, and will they be safe, and can I check up on them? And that's the bigger, patient piece that I think is just very important for people to be aware of.
Fabulous. It's life-changing what you're doing. Absolutely. And we're talking about embryos, and I'm thinking kids here. I know that in addition to being an incredible tech exec, you are a mom with a little one at home. How are you managing COVID and being a mom right now?
It's definitely been interesting for sure, for everyone. I have a 4-year-old. His name is Max. I think I very much identify myself through my career, but I will have to say that he is my biggest accomplishment, and I love him. It's been very interesting to have him home and then not home, and then as of yesterday, home again. I will be honest, I can't do everything, and I, long ago embraced that fact. But I definitely couldn't be where I am today without the support of my husband. He's a stay-at-home dad, and we made that decision together when we had Max. And, he supports me, he encourages me, he calls me out and holds up a mirror to me, but he is a really true partner. And for me, that's what worked, to make this work. And I'm very grateful for that. But I think, my advice, I guess, would be, find the people who support you in the way that you need it and surround yourself with those people. And also be aware that you could be that support person for someone else. And so, seek out those people as well. And it only takes a little bit of that to really make this whole craziness so much more manageable.
Definitely. Okay, we've got a quick little lightning round for you, just some fun questions.
Okay.
Just go for the quick answer here. Morning or
Okay.
night person?
Definitely night.
Okay. Yoga, Pilates, something else.
Yoga.
Perfect. You can't start the day without.
Hug from my son and a large cup of coffee.
uh, Favorite quote?
Oh, that's hard. There's so many. I think one of them, which is from a mentor of mine, she said, "Be present where you are."
Fabulous. Best book you've read recently? Do you have time to read?
I do. That's one of the ways that I kind of escape is to read. I do that a lot. I just reread one of my favorite books, which is "The Hard Thing About Hard Things" by Ben Horowitz. I highly recommend it. A lot of people talk about how great it is to start a business, but very few are honest and open about how difficult it is to run one. And I think he's got a lot of words of wisdom that are interesting.
And lastly, where would you like to be in 5 years?
Hopefully, with my family, happy and healthy, maybe running my own business one day. That sounds good.
That sounds great. Thank you, Melanie. I know everybody on the call has learned so much. It's such a treat to talk to you. And have a wonderful day. We can't wait to hear more about tomorrow. I know we certainly will in the news very soon. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Great talking to you
Thank
today.
you.
Thanks, everyone.